Aloha. My name is Kaitea Belford Smith. I'm the coordinator for practical agriculture for Hamakua. This is a program of the Hilo Hamakua Community Development Corporation. We are co-sponsored by the Hawaii County Department of Research and Development, and we are in collaboration with the Laupuhoehoe Community Public Charter School. We mahalo all those entities for their support in allowing us to use this facility and to run these programs for Hilo and Hamakua communities. Mahalo everybody for coming out. We have Drake Weiner here to talk about chickens and raising pigs and chickens with no smell and growing nutrient-dense food. So, mahalo.
Thank you. Aloha. So I'm just getting my presentation onto here, and we'll be ready. Hopefully this is booted up, is it? So out of the audience, who here is familiar with microorganisms? And okay, so about half of us. And Donna, can you type the password into this computer? So has anyone heard of Korean natural farming? Yeah. And of those who have heard of it, have you dabbled in it?
Password?
Okay. What recipe did you make?
I don't know the name of it. I just with worm castings and some other things. I don't know. I was working on an aquaponics farm, and the guy that
So he used some of the inputs maybe in his operation somehow?
Yeah, there's molasses involved.
Just gotta open that up.
It is?
And worm castings.
So, let's see, how do I get to the display? Okay, so the other people that have, what recipe have you done?
I think it's the green spray on that wished to have chips of the, you would say that spinach and with brown sugar fermented.
So you made like a fermented plant juice from spinach. Okay. And
I've done the same. I've done fruit juices from fruits, and I've used Azola. And I do know the process to do the iron flour, but I've never done it. I've been to John Kavanaugh's farm at Pelican Organics in Hamakua, and I know he uses it. I also know a guy named James Rushing, and he's doing it modifying.
cool. Okay. Cool. James was at my farm this morning shooting his natural farming documentary. So I spent like 5 hours this morning with him shooting all this stuff, and they got so much interest at the Hawaii Community College that they now had to make a video to accommodate like the thousands of people that are interested. So this natural farming, that's the reason I asked, is because it's quite a buzzword around town these days. 3-4 years ago when I was here talking about it, it was completely brand new. Asked people, have you heard of this? Even microorganisms. People are becoming more and more aware in our daily lives that microorganisms are around. So, like Kaitea said, today primarily what I'm going to talk to you about is raising pigs and chickens with no smell, and then growing nutrient-dense food. And those two things really demonstrate kind of the pinnacles of why this Korean natural farming that I'm practicing, and also the Hawaii natural farming that I've integrated that in from Korea, which is much different climatically to Hawaii. And so if you read this here, this is the description, so you've probably already seen that. Maybe that's the reason you're here tonight. So I'd like to start off with starting with pigs, because this is the way that got me believing in what I'm doing with all my heart, all my soul. Because I see it, what happens with these animals and how comfortable they are and how this whole system works with no cleaning, no smell, no antibiotics, and no disease. No joke. So I heard about all this from this guy here. This is Master Cho. I spent a week in Korea with him. I spent a couple weeks with him here in Hawaii during his trainings. And he is kind of the modern revivalist of this no-smell method. He's famous for saving the Chinese during the Olympics, I think in 2008. That the Chinese army travels with their pigs. Instead of traveling with prepared food, they actually travel with their animals. And they were afraid that if they moved their troops into Beijing to keep things cool for the Olympics, that the pigs would actually cause a riot from the stench of the pigs. And they caught wind that this guy knew about a way to raise pigs with no smell. And they were like, they called him up, and he went in, worked with their top generals. They got their pigs on this no-smell method overnight, and the Olympics went off without a hitch. Subsequently, he was awarded the highest Chinese honor. Like their, whatever their medal of the highest thing, he got that. He's like one of only a few people that's not a Chinese citizen to have one of these. Like, this man has one of these. So it's not only like hearsay, I'm doing it, you can see it at my place, but it's also global and worldwide. And so catching on to this phenomenon is important. And we've been doing the groundwork here. That basically we've been proving it in Hawaii with systems so that it's a 4-foot deep litter system. We have moisture probes on the bottom, and no moisture over 3 years has penetrated down that 4 feet. So with that, it's real easy to get a NRCS approved waste management plan. You basically cut and paste, and you say, I'm using the inoculated deep litter system. You cut and paste that over. You don't have to write a waste management plan. It's done. You don't have to worry about manure lagoons. You don't have to worry about this or that. You're done. This whole system is called natural farming, right? It's based on natural principles that, like making money is important, but it's also, this system's designed from the animal's point of view. Like, does the animal like being stuck in a cement stall all day? Not really. So they're looking at the structure to get the proper space for the pig so that it's comfortable, it's happy. Less stress means less susceptibility to disease. So your animals are happier because this system is designed for the animal, not for the dollar bill. Although it really does save money in the long term because you don't have a manure lagoon, you don't have to pay anyone to clean it. Basically just throw food over the fence, you're in business. The tools that I use here in natural farming are really simple for animal raising. You only have to know 3 of them for this. And I've changed their names to make them more palatable. So essentially the first tool we're working with is compost concentrate. And I named it compost concentrate because if I give you compost concentrate, do we all know what to do with it? Dilute it and use it, right? Simple. So I've renamed this substance here compost concentrate. So this is what's previously been called an IMO bokashi, IMO 1, 2, 3, 4. I'm just calling it compost concentrate because if I give you compost concentrate, you know how to use it. If I give you IMO, you're like, what do I do with it? Well, you dilute it and you use it, but if I call it compost concentrate, that's immediately apparent. So this is compost concentrate. I'll talk about it later here, but just briefly, this is what this tool is. Real simple, just basically a dust. The next tool we're working with is lactic acid bacteria. And I haven't thought of a clever name for this one yet. I've been thinking of emergency workers, or germ eliminators, or your best friend. And I'm not sure which one is the best yet, because your best friend, you don't really know how to use that. But we can hang out. But one of the cool things is all my things are edible. You may not want to eat that because it's mixed half with dirt. You could eat it, but you don't really want to. But this here is edible. This is lactic acid bacteria. I'm just going to pass it around. Feel free to take a sip. If not, take a smell. If you're not that bold, you can dip your finger and lick it. But I prefer to go straight to the jar. And I'm going to pass this around. So we'll start with two. So lactic acid bacteria is a tool for us because not only is it the most amazing probiotic and unbelievably delicious, I really recommend you take the leap and put it to your lips, that it also helps to immediately eliminate odors. So that's, yeah, it's really good, right? See? These guys know what's up.
Not ice cream.
We put it in our pancakes, we do all kinds of stuff. So this here is the most powerful microorganism on Earth. Bar none, the most powerful. It's not always the most dominant because it's hungry and it doesn't always fit into all the niche situations. So another microbe may be better suited than it, but if you sprayed a bunch of lacto on a bunch of food there, it would outcompete every other microbe and dominate and clean up that environment and make it safe for you. So if you had a pile of poop on the floor, you take that it's covered with E. coli and bacteria that stink. That's what's causing that stink as they're digesting the bacteria. You spray that LAB on that poop, and LAB goes to work, starts eating all that stuff that the other ones are eating, and now they have nothing to eat, and the smell immediately vanishes. It's not to say those bacteria are gone yet. They're starting to disappear as the lactose starts to outcompete them and eat their food, but they no longer smell. In about 15 to 30 minutes, I can walk up to a steaming pile of stinky stuff, spray it, and it's not going to smell. That's why it's one of our tools, especially in animal raising. Animals don't wait to go outside, use the bathroom. They just go where they go, and this tool helps clean up after them and makes it sanitary for us. It doesn't sterilize it, but it makes it sanitary. So you're not going to get sick from bad microorganisms. It produces lactobacillus as a cleaning strategy. Now the third tool up here is growth syrup, which I think is just a brilliant name for it. I came up for it last night right here on this slide, and I was like, growth syrup. Because it's called other things. It's called fermented plant juice. Maybe you've heard of that. That's pretty confusing, but if I call it growth syrup, when do you apply it? When you want stuff to grow, right? Oh, simple. And it tastes like syrup, because everyone's like, what is that, syrup? I'm like, I finally got it. I was like, okay, just call it syrup. If everyone thinks it's syrup, it's syrup. So I'll pass this one around too. This one's been rolling around in the compost concentrate, so it may have a little extra on it, but equally delicious, if not more delicious. And it's important that you taste these things, because tasting them, if you taste my stuff, it is such high quality stuff. Don't, another natural farmer that made some stuff, be careful. But this stuff is so high quality that you need to reach this level of quality in your inputs. And they need to be able to taste them. And you should drink it with no fear. You should drink it knowing I'm going to get healthier and stronger. And it's good. And you're going to start putting on your pancakes and you'll be like, why was I ever buying anything else? It's true. And a beard. I'm going to be like... So the growth syrup provides the food. Like I said, the lactic acid bacteria is going to do really well if it has the food. And this is the food for it. So if you enable in a system plenty of really good food, you're going to get lots of really good microbes living there. It's when they get stressed, when the food starts to run out, that's when you get nasty microbes and disease that comes in. So this tool is used to add food to a system, the highest quality, most pure food. And so with these three tools of the compost concentrate, which is just like a compost pile but concentrated, right here, this right here is the equivalent of most people's huge compost. This right here, it's all concentrated down right in here. This tool here of the most powerful microorganism on Earth, and this tool here of the delicious syrup food enables me to basically come into any animal system, eliminate the smell, and clean up all the mess without any toxic chemicals. My main thing I'm using here is sugar. Sugar. That's it. That's why it's so sweet. So on to the pigs, right? So I'm going to start with pigs. This is equally applicable to chickens, just the shallower ground beneath them, and chickens are actually slightly easier. But pigs, I'm going to explain this scenario because pigs are notoriously stinky animals, and this system has absolutely no smell when you build it this way. I have 3 of these stalls going, had them going since January, haven't cleaned it once, no smell in there. So this slide, a lot on it, really informative. If you want this slide presentation, I have given it to Kaitea. Most likely I'm going to post the audio and these slides together online for you. So don't worry about writing too much down. This is also at odorlesspigs.com. The same graphic right here that I cut and paste because I made it. No copyright. So the main thing I want you to notice here is that you got the roof up above aligned with the sun, so it's going to go over. You got the east to west with the sun going over. This should actually be a high enough roof. It should be about 6 feet up. If it's lower than that, you're not going to get as good circulation. When the roof's higher, it gets better airflow, better air circulating through, and I have more slides detailing that. Then the floor. Essentially, I started with a plastic liner. In my case, 2 of my pig pens do not have a plastic liner. They are straight on the ground. Then it's recommended that you put in about 6 inches of charcoal at the bottom. None of my pig pens have charcoal at the bottom. It's really expensive stuff. I'm not through the NRCS waste management plan either because I have under 4 sows. So if you're going to go bigger, you do need to follow this. But then I have a bunch of big logs. I have about 2 feet of big logs. And not only are they big this way, they're big this way. So that if the animal starts to dig down, it's not going to flip up all my logs onto the top of the surface. Because if you get a big boar or a big sow in there, they will dig and flip the logs up. But if you put in big, nice logs, they'll stay down forever. Then I cover the top with 2 feet of green waste. So presently, what I'm the most satisfied with is wood chips. Sawdust is too fine, heats up too much here. The pig is always uncomfortable and sweating. It's too finely particulate, it gets too hot for the pig. Coconut is another really good thing to fill it with. I have a friend who's very successful with coconut. In a pinch, I use banana. So banana stalks, banana leaf, the whole banana upper tree into here. So far, the wood chips have lasted me about 6 months without having to really replenish it. The bananas were gone in about 3 months. Didn't really help that the pig started to eat it as well. It was like, the floor is delicious. But meaning you can be really flexible with this. Basically, you get some big logs and you get whatever green waste you have. Grass clippings, wood chips, whatever you got. You can throw it in there. You can build a system like this. After my pig had eaten down all this top green waste and it was living just basically on the logs for a couple weeks while I was trying to arrange for wood chips, it was living straight on the logs, still no smell. Like, go show that to anyone else. The pig was really uncomfortable because it couldn't walk well on the logs at all. It was just like, oh man, come on. But no smell. You know, it urinated, defecated in there, no smell coming out. And the key to this, after you have this set up, is to then introduce these in. So this here is enough to do a 14 by 14 size pig pen. This is roughly about 5 pounds of the stuff, 3 to 5 pounds of compost concentrate. So this is enough to inoculate my whole 14 by 14 or a 20 by 20 chicken pen. It's probably enough for you. Then I diluted this stuff and the syrup, and I diluted them 1 to 500. So in my 5 gallons of water that I put and kind of watered all this in and brought it back to life with water, because life means water, in that 5 gallons of water, I only had 40 milliliters of this in there, which is in ounces like 2 ounces. Yeah, so about 2 ounces into 5 gallons. So of this stuff that I made, to do this, to inoculate a 14 by 14 pig pen, it needs next to nothing. Because it's compost concentrate, and these other things are so powerful and so concentrated that they're right there. And typically they recommend you inoculate with the compost concentrate, and then in a day or two, then bring your animals in. In my case, I just did it all at the same time. I was like, it worked. So again, to look at the piggery barn design, and this is optimal. This is like, thousands of dollar type structure. In the last year or two that we've gotten the approval, about 100 piggeries have gone in, from guys leaning tin on stacked rocks to like really nice facilities like this. So it's really dynamic on how you build it, but there are some key components, and one of those again is the height of the roof to the litter. And the other is it really helps to have this to suck out the air through the top. A lot of designs don't have that, and it's fine. I found actually here in the tropics, it's not that big of a deal, but the high roof is a big deal. And also having the sun go from east to west, which I think the next slide shows. This is more about the east to west across is important, because that helps to heat the roof that way. If you run your piggery and it's faced north, or it's faced the other, so it's not basically in the sun exposure, the roof isn't going to heat up, and it's not going to suck the air up, and to get that airflow moving, which is going to keep your litter drier. Because if the pig makes urine, then then that needs that airflow to wick that water up, and it's the dryness that's keeping this system really with no smell. If it does rain significantly into your pen, it will start to smell. But then you can get the lactic acid bacteria out and spray it, and the smell will vanish again. But essentially, I inoculate once with this compost concentrate, once in the beginning, and it's good for the rest of my life. In fact, it's going to get better and better. By year 5, it's going to be probably at its peak bestness.
Here in the islands, in the trade winds, across the northeast leaves of Oregon,
Perhaps, but what I found is the sun is a hot heating element, and I found that majority, at least at my place, is that during the day the winds are going up the hill, and at night they come down the hill. So even though they're predominantly northwest, the airflow, I'm right at the east side of the island, so it works really, I'm lined up to both of them naturally. So, yeah. As long as you're getting the clearance, like even the orientation of the building isn't as important as that 6 to 8 feet of clearance from the floor. It's the most important factor in design. And so, yeah, so this makes sense there. And this is just kind of through the Korean slides that I got, and I just took them straight across, and basically it's just showing you, a pig pen of what this is, like his conceptual design of what he thinks it should look like in his manual here. Pigs all together, they're not separate out, they're together, and they're kind of stirring their things into the ground. This is what it kind of looks like. This is what I saw when I went to Korea. Pretty high density. It's not as high density as the ones that are just stuck in a box. But, I can't believe they put pigs in boxes. And then also, this is when my pigs had piglets, this was the easiest thing. I didn't have to dock their tails. I didn't have to clip their teeth. I didn't have to antibiotic them. They just were natural in there. They got along well. I followed this system. It worked really well. This is what a farrowing pen looks like, and this small area right here has a heating lamp over it. The bars are wide enough that the little pigs can fit in, but the big pig can't. And so that just gives them a little space where they can warm up and leave the mom alone for a little bit. But really humane pens in their design, in pretty industrial type setting. Again, separate them out so they don't fight when they're eating food. And basically just showing that this whole system that he has here is a cycle. That the pigs eat the milk, they digest the grasses, they get better. Skip past this part. And this is not applicable here, but everywhere else. You don't need to heat the pig pens. The floor is actively composting and hot. Here, actually, the pigs, if you use sawdust, it's too hot for them. They're just sweating, and then they'll always be in their water dish. And one of the coolest things, and I did this morning, is I laid down in my pig pen. We were shooting that video documentary, and I'm like, watch this, dude. I just get in the pig pen and I just lay down. Like right next to a fat pile of, it's like, I don't, because it's not going to get on me. If it does, I'm going to be cleaner. Like, it's a crazy concept, but it works. And you can sit down right in with your pigs. It's amazing. So basically, I went from kind of the theory, the Korean thing, to now these are some practical examples right here. This is my place. We built a barn with our tractor, framed out some 2x4 walls, put some metal posts cemented into the ground to anchor it all on, and then I took some recycled iron roofing and just screwed it onto the sides. And that was my bottom container to hold that 4-foot deep litter system. So real simple. You can see this is the first one I did. I have a plastic liner in it. Didn't have any plastic liners for my subsequent pens. That's fine. You can also see that I got the big logs down here. Now this isn't the best example of how to put logs in there. That was my first time building it. This is my first pen. What I do now is after throwing the logs in, I climb into the thing and compress them all so that they're really tightly packed, as little airspace as I can into there, and then it's less chips. Because the chips take a lot of time, money, energy, the whole thing to get them there. And so if you can get a real nice log base underneath, in the long run, you're going to be a little better off.
So you want logs that are this small, so they don't break down as fast?
No, it doesn't. It doesn't necessarily matter. You could go with something like, gunpowder tree, something that's going to break down fast, or you could use. I know a guy using coconuts. He used the coconut tree, and then the coconut fronds for the top part. So, and then the shell and stuff for the top part. So. Those are real nice because they're real easy to pack in. They're real tight coconuts. You could use any eucalyptus, any wood.
Is there anything
Yeah, you know how many guavas that would be? This is rose apple. This is what I use as rose apple. It's nice because it kind of branches far apart, kind of easy.
Can you explain building out the frame and the siding? Can you just do it?
You want this thing to stay dry. So if you're going to dig a hole and be able to keep water from pooling into it, yes. If not, no. Okay, so this is again here. This is the second pen I made, or maybe it's still the first one. But here's it completely filled up, and then again, there's the IMO that I used, and the little bit of lactic acid and all that diluted into this half-gallon thing, which then I diluted into a bigger. I dumped about 5 gallons of water into here with all my stuff into the top. But essentially, I used that and that to inoculate that entire thing. I'm done for life. And then here's it in action. I got all my little pigs. That's my boar now. Got some kids checking them out. And I said I'd talk about chickens as well. So on that same thing, where we're going with a 4-foot deep litter system, you don't need to. What we did here was about 6 to 8 inches of grass clippings. You could use anything, any green matter. The key to it is it's cut short. If I put grass and hay in there that's long, the chickens aren't going to be able to turn that long hay. It's going to hay and stick to itself and not be able to be turned. And their poop is going to sit on the top and really stink. Because their poop and pee is combined in the chicken, and it's real nasty stuff. And it'll sit on the top. But if you do it with grass clippings like this, and then they'll scratch. And they'll scratch, and they'll scratch. And that stuff will go right under, and you'll never have any smell problems. So short material in there, or finely shredded. No logs. No logs necessary. I do this straight onto the grass floor. It's important that you're not going to get too much water on it, so you got to have a good root. If you are going to get water, you're just going to have to use lactic acid bacteria more often. And then I use that same thing to inoculate it. Again, the compost concentrate, the growth syrup, and the LAB, lactic acid bacteria, on the floor. You can also, my chickens are at really low density right now. And I should have thrown some high density pictures in here, but essentially in like a 10 by 20 thing, you can fit 160 birds, which may seem like high density, but I've never seen calmer chickens than in that situation, because it's something about that number, and you got to balance the right amount of roosters and stuff, and I don't know that offhand, but that at that number, they feel like their group is complete. Like they have all the right pecking order, everything in there. At 160 birds, they're like happy. Like less than that, they fight. More than that, they're too crowded. And so you can run this pretty high density for chickens. And also, if you see this feeding dish, this is also the Korean idea of the feeding dish, where it's shaped like a V, so the chicken can naturally scratch underneath, but it's not going to go up into the food. And then also this bar up here pivots and rotates, so they can't stand up there and crap into their food. It rotates, they fall off. So it's real easy to keep their food up there nice clean for them, and still respect their scratching behavior. Nope. We should name it though. That is in the Cho book, and I don't have any copies right now, but you could check out naturalfarminghawaii.net, and under learning materials, it's in there somewhere. Yes. So the idea, that's a good question. How does the compost work if it's so dry? And this is one of the beauties of this, is that this is concentrated compost. So what that means is that there's a bunch of fungal spores in there, and like spores of bacteria, like seeds. It's not the actual thing itself, it's like seeds of them. And the seeds are then distributed all over this floor, and then when the animal makes waste, there's liquid in the waste. And it's that water that's in that waste that's going to activate that biology, that as soon as it hits the floor, that biology is going to be like, hey, there's water over here. And they're just going to swarm into that waste and suck all the moisture out of there almost immediately and eliminate all your smell out. And it's going to compost right in that little microcosm right around the dump. And then once they're done with it, it's done. So that's how it's composting, is right there immediately on that thing. And it's the moisture of the waste that's triggering that reaction.
Don't you have that money? Do you ever harvest any of that stuff for using other agricultural purposes?
So after a year, you could harvest a third of your floor. You could harvest it out and use it. You don't want to take it all because it gets better over time, but you could harvest out a third. In my case, I don't actually harvest it. I make compost tea, which I'll get to later. So y'all cool with that so far, chickens? Here's some more designs. This is the piggery in Mountain View. And again, obviously you see a different type of roof. This one's made out of like plastic. Much more inexpensive structure than I built. Here's the whole thing. And these guys are this is a USDA agent just hanging out in the piggery. Like if you've ever known a USDA agent to like hang out in a piggery, they probably don't have a sense of smell. But these girls, I assure you do. And there's no smell in there. That's why they're hanging out. It's calm, it's peaceful. You blow people's minds. And again, they're using some sawdust type stuff. And this is what the floor starts to look like after a little while. It doesn't look like wood chips anymore. It starts to look like this, concentrated compost. Here's another example. This is in Paradise Park, and this is a small personal backyard pig pen, and also a small personal backyard chicken coop. I think this chicken coop here costs about like $300 to put up. With the chicken wire and everything, it's mongoose proof, the whole thing. She raises about, 30 chickens or so in there. Yeah, and there's her pig right there. You see it hanging out in the corner. But again, this is like just framed out of wood and then hog paneling up top for this building to keep a pig inside. So a single unit, you know, you could have your own pig right outside for your baby luau or whatever you got going on.
So for the chickens, you don't need the same kind of meat as the pigs. You just get a regular one.
Yeah, yeah. Here's another example of a piggery. And this guy, you know, he used chain, like the fence type stuff as his walls. You know, and again, like I said, he's filling his up with coconut. You see the coconut in there. And you know, again, for his walls, he put up this shade stuff because if the pigs were getting too hot, too much sun on them. So he put up the shade. And he actually used some clear paneling up there. And he's like, don't use the clear paneling. Bad idea. Blocks the sun, still overheats the pig. Like the UV light won't go through that panel. So he was trying to get the UV light to go through to clean the floor. Doesn't work. He overheats your pig. Real bad idea. You also notice he has some waters hanging down from the roof. And that's because the pigs, they want to create a puddle to lie in. But in this natural farming system, we can't have them creating lots of moisture on the floor. That'll ruin the floor and you'll have to spray LIB on it. So he's gone through a couple iterations of different waters. And here's another look at it. You know, they're raising big sows, little piggies, people checking it out. Things growing in it. No, that's just the food they threw in, banana leaf. And so this is my pig bacon here. And I wanted to use this as sort of a segue out of, we've been working with the design of the piggery. I'm going to move on briefly to fermenting the food for your pigs. This helps them get more nutrition out of the food. Just the probiotics help to break it down before they eat it. Also makes their waste less stinky because stinky waste is undigested food, but they're digesting better with this. So this is typically what I'm mixing into my chicken's food here. I'm mixing in fact, I'll skip to this and then go back to that slide. So the base recipe I'm using for all my animal feeds is basically this. 30% leaves, grass, or roughage, some sort of like grassy type thing. 30% of roots or grains. So I'm either getting like really starchy roots or some type of grain, like a corn or some type of scratch thing like that. I'm doing 30% of their diet as fruits right now. This is true for the chickens as well, same diet across the board. And then 10% of their diet is the concentrated compost. That has dirt in it, so it has all those earth minerals. It also has all that bacteria and fungus and nematodes in there, which are going to provide different enzymes and different types of nutrition that you can't just get in a pellet, because it's alive, it's active when I add that in. So this is basically this is the base of my food. Like this, you know. So however I slice that, however I dice it, I get somehow this. Then with this, I'll come back with my natural farming tools. And I have lactic acid bacteria. I have, well, probably this one's lactic because there's less of it. And I have the growth syrup. Then I actually make also a calcium, which I'm not going to talk about today, but I also make a water-soluble calcium. This is for my chickens. So this is, I add it for their eggs to be stronger. And then this last one over here is an herbal tincture. It's like sort of like the medicine. And I'm also not going to talk about that today because it's a little bit more advanced. But with these basic tools, you should be able to get everything going. But that's essentially, and then I'm also mixing in my good friend right here, seawater. I actually mix a lot of ocean water into my animal feed because those salts have tons of trace nutrients that the animals like. And a little bit of ocean water in there isn't enough to make it too salty or damage them, and you still get all those minerals. So I use seawater as well.
So did you say what the provisions are?
Seawater is 1 to 30, and the rest are, you wanted the, yeah, I probably should have written this on a slide. I wasn't actually going to get into that detail, but this is diluted 1 to 500, 1 to 1,000, 1 to 30. And before I kind of like if you use this and you go home and you start saying you're natural farming, I'd rather you took a workshop from me first to like do this hands-on together. Because learning, like I can just show this and you can say you added it and done that stuff, but these have a lot of precision in how they're made. And I can taste one person's lacto. Just did a workshop last weekend where I tasted it and it was something other than lactobacillus. He had followed the recipe by the book, but he came out with a completely different product. And I'm in the very near future, I'm going to do workshops on lactic acid bacteria in the growth syrup. Yeah. So basically on the food, after I mix that stuff in, I let it ferment for 12 to 24 hours. I typically make tomorrow's food today and feed them yesterday's food today. And I'll just let it sit on the floor fermenting with all those nutrients in it, and it ferments, does its thing. If you're looking for a book on how to do this, I actually forgot to bring a copy with me. I was going to bring it so I could hold it up and be like, this is the book you should get. But go to this website here, hubbleshogheaven.blogspot.com, and she's written a book that tells you every crop you need to plant if you want to reach, protein requirements for your chickens or for your pigs. And she lives in Hawaiian beaches, so it's totally local in terms of what we're doing. A little bit different than Hamakua, but still, really applicable. The same plants she's growing. She goes through discussions of the water system she's used and what she liked about them, what she didn't. She's gone through, all kinds of, for the last 4 years doing this natural farming stuff. She's documented it in this book here. And so it's available. So instead of me reinventing the wheel and telling you all about these stuffs, check out this book. I think it's like $12 even. It's really affordable. Great book. Okay. So if we're all cool with that, I'm basically going to move from animals now to nutrient-dense produce. Everyone enjoying themselves so far?
Awesome.
All right. Cool. So, nutrient-dense produce. This is the reason I'm a natural farmer. This reason right here. I want to live a long time. I want to be healthy. I want to be happy. I notice when I eat better food, I'm just naturally happier. I think a lot of that has to do with the nutritional quality of food. And that's why I'm doing natural farming. Again, I learned the same stuff from the same dude and his daughter, Ju-young. This is us in Korea. This is also my dad. Some of you may recognize him. Cool guy. But this is in Korea with him. And basically at that time, didn't really know what I was getting into, but I knew I wanted to farm. I wasn't even into animals yet. So that whole beginning that I just showed you wasn't even in my mind yet. I just wanted to grow food. And I knew that when I started off with my dad showing me the fertilizer bag and sprinkling this stuff out, that I was like, something not right with this. And, the smell, the whole, eating away at your hands, the whole deal like that, I wasn't into it. So I started composting and doing some things like that. But eventually ran into Ginger John. He met me up with Master Cho. And this was one of my first experiments I did growing food. On this side is my natural farming. And on this side was I ran out of stuff. And it just turned out to make a really cool picture because I wasn't even trying to do a trial. But clearly it works. That was just, you can see the definition of the leaf size being bigger. If you do your own trial, you'll see it works. Why it works, that's what I've been discovering for the last 5 years. And it's been just an amazing journey of everything I learned adds on itself, and I found very little contradictory information. So I know that I'm onto something good, that if everything keeps adding up, that I'm on the right path here. And again, I like to eat good. Like my naturally farmed chicken eggs, my naturally farmed sweet potato. I don't know, maybe that's taro. Who knows what that is? But it was probably delicious, right? And nutrient dense. And we all know that if we eat good food, man, our bodies should really be resilient to most things. You know, you fall, break a bone because you fell out of a tree, that's something different, but you shouldn't be just dying of, like, I don't know. So, but this is the little conundrum we got here. That if the USDA, if you take their records and you go back to 1913, which is the earliest they started keeping records, you could, the saying, an apple a day keeps the doctor away, was valid in 1913. You could eat one apple and you would get so much nutrition that you wouldn't need to see the doctor for like a simple thing. Today, the same nutrient that used to be in our 1913 apple is now in 30 apples. 30 of them. So you can't even begin to eat 30 apples because you get so full that your body is still hungry and craving that nutrient of the original apple, so that you eat more and more trying to get that nutrient in there, but we're just selling water packed in a red wax thing with a stem on it.
If you eat one apple, just stay away from the doctor because there's too much antibiotics over there.
You're going the whole, you're at the other end, dude. Coming back out. Yeah, well, you don't have to go to the, what do you call the guy after you die? You don't have to go to the morgue. You can just die, and I'm like, I'm already a mummy, man. So in the nutrient decline, right? Why has the nutrients declined? Like, what's the deal? Are the apples smaller today? You know, I mean, clearly in this picture it seems like that, but, you know, are apples just non-edible? I don't know. But what I'm going to tell you, and you know, your mileage may vary, is that it's the soil food web that's making the difference here. That what I mean by the soil food web is basically a living earth. That the organic matter is being eaten by the bacteria, which are giving it to the fungi, which are going to the nematodes, which are going to the arthropods, which go to the earthworms, which goes to the nematodes, which goes to the birds. It's this whole system of living things that are all doing their different part and adding different nutrients or transforming them and doing something that then we over here as the animals get to eat, you know, all this work that we never even saw happen. We just saw the apple, picked it up, and was like, awesome, apple. But I believe it's all of this in here that's making the nutrition in there, and it's because in the last 100 years we've decimated this. Chemicals all over it, poisons all over it. The earth was like, oh man, come on, give me a break, man. But we can get back to it. And the way, you know, through my studying, through my seeing, basically what I've defined it down to is you need to restore the 3 tiers of the soil food web. And the 3 tiers are the bacteria, which you can think of them as the building material, such as the rocks, such as the dirt, such as the metal still in the ground. That's building material, right? But it's there, it's not really usable. You know, like, I'd have to smelt the ore before I could do anything with it to use it, right? You know, there's ore, but I'd have to smelt, you know. So bacteria are the building material. They're that. Fungus is your second level. And fungus are the architects. So they come into this situation, which is this building material, basically bacteria hanging out everywhere, and they start to assemble it. They take a post, they set it there. They take bagasse, they turn it into a roof. They take glass, they turn it into windows. And they assemble structure in your soil. So they, power lines, airways, waterways, they're building that. So they're taking the bacteria, which are the building materials, and shaping them into buildings and structure. Now you got the third level, which is these nematodes, which is like us. We're in this building. We wouldn't be in this if it was just bacteria. We wouldn't be in the ore. We had to let the fungus go. The fungus design this, build structure in our soil. For us now, we're the nematodes in here to enjoy it. The nematodes are important in this because if you don't have the nematodes present, you don't have a way of releasing the building material back into being rebuilt. So another way of saying that is that bacteria are very high in nitrogen. But if you get all the bacteria in your entire soil is just bacteria, you got a bunch of nitrogen, but now what's your plant going to eat? Because it's all in bags of meat like me. You know, you got to cook meat first before you can eat meat. And so it's all tied up in bacteria. As the nematodes start to move around, they start to eat this bacteria. And they're so rich that when they take one bite, there's 100 parts of nitrogen. The nematode can only use maybe 1 to 10 parts of that. So it's going to poop out 90 parts of nitrogen behind it. So it can't use and metabolize all that. It's eating too rich food, and its waste now is now really rich food. And this is what gets the nitrogen cycle to cycle. So you got the bacteria then being eaten by the nematodes, which bring it up, and you get this whole thing to cycle around. Your building material, the guys who build structure, and then the guys who eat the building material but then turn it into plant available or further building of structure. So these are the 3 tiers. Those are the reasons for them in your soil. Certain soil conditions will trigger, like for instance, almost everyone's familiar with the root knot nematode, right? And people think it's a pest, so they get a nemicide and they put out nemicide and they kill their entire acre. Fun fact, out of every multicellular animal, I'm a multicellular animal, we all are, plants are multicellular animals, or no, excuse me, they're not, they're multicellular plants. So every multicellular animal, 4 out of 5 of them are a nematode. So you think of all the life you see, 4 times more than that life you see is nematodes. So nematodes are present everywhere. I've been told if you went out into space and got rid of all the Earth and you just left the nematodes, you would still see a perfect outline of the continents. That's how prevalent nematodes are everywhere. Everywhere. These are some of the most important creatures on Earth. And that's why we need to take care of them. And yes, they do get out of balance sometimes, out of balance. But are there ever bad nematodes? No, they're just out of balance. So there's some other way to correct that in your soils. Odds are you're feeding the root feeders too much. Change their food, they're not going to be there as present. Okay. So what I want to do is show you how we can restore these 3 levels into our garden, right? So my solution to getting those 3 levels is compost concentrate. It's this stuff right here, and it's also this stuff up here where you see it in its activated form. This is as it's in my soil, it's well fed, it's activated, it's not in direct sunlight. This is under a little, under this bagasse. But this is activated. You're seeing these white hair type things. And this is what people would call like an IMO. It's my indigenous microorganisms being activated by a compost concentrate. And again, you just dilute it to use. It's really easy when you call it compost concentrate. It's not a whole new concept. It's just concentrated compost. To make it is really simple, and I'll go over a whole workshop on this. I'm basically just going to kind of briefly go over it. But essentially, let's see, this slide and this slide correspond with each other. So I'm going to flip back and forth between these 2 slides. So step 1 is I'm going to collect the microbes in my area. So I get a box like this. I fill it with a simple starch, such as cooked white rice. You could use ulu, you could use cassava, you could use any simple starch that's cooked and available. And you set it out in your woods, and what you'll get is your nice little box will be filled with the compost concentrate starter, like your inoculant. Just like how you saw in my activated one, it was those white wispy things. Again, you'll see you got those white wispy things in this box. I don't know if you can see it on the projector. Sometimes the color's a little different, but hopefully you can see that. Okay, so then step 2 of concentrating your compost is selecting for the best bacteria. Because in step 1, we got everything that was out there. Step 2 is taking just the best bacteria out. So the way we do that is we mix it with sugar. Bacteria loves sugar, brown sugar, not white sugar. Bacteria hates white sugar. Good bacteria hates white sugar. Bad bacteria loves white sugar. It's better to say it. So equal parts of sugar. So I got the best bacteria in here. Step 3 of it is selecting for the best fungus. So what selects from the best fungus is that I got the best bacteria, it's the best building material, so now the best fungus can come in and say, oh, well, here's the best building material, they naturally want to be there, but then I also feed food specific for fungus. So in this case here, we're using the bran of wheat, which is called mill run. It's the outer hull off of when they make whole wheat bread into white bread. It's that outer hull. And that's ground up here, and that's a very complex carbohydrate. It also has nice crude proteins, fats, and different things in there. It's very bioavailable, and it also is very good for holding the moisture content. That if I use something like wood chips and fish meal, that's going to hold moisture differently than this almost like oatmeal-like substance. So we mix it into this substrate. When we mix it into that, the fungus, it's its favorite food. It's like, oatmeal, yes, you must have known I was coming over. And it just eats and eats and eats and breeds like crazy. So you got the best bacteria already living in there, now you got the best fungus living in there. Then the 4th step is to mix in and get the best nematodes. Also in this stage where you get some rock minerals. And it's that higher order thing that I said, the bacteria are kind of the lowest level, the fungus are this next level. Once you have those built up, now with a little dirt minerals, the nematodes are going to take off. And you're going to get nematodes and protozoa, which are more multicellular or larger microorganisms in the soil happening. So you're going to get, in this compost concentrate, you're going to get the best bacteria, the best fungus, and the best nematodes. So you're going to get the 3 things you need to restore your soil food web, and you're going to get the best ones concentrated in this compost, right here. And so this is what it looks like once I've mixed it with dirt. You can see it kind of got a darker color to it. It also heats up during this process because you are composting, but it's a concentrated composting. So I'm not turning a 10-ton pile, I'm turning like a 100-pound pile here. And this is the same, like, equivalent. And you want to keep this thing in a low temperature zone while you're turning it. Typically compost will get a lot higher, but this concentrated compost stays at a low temperature. I try to keep it, when I'm turning it, less than 130. So if my thermometer says it's 130 degrees, I turn it. My other way is my hand is a great thermometer, because I'm 100 degrees, 98.6, I'm healthy, right? So if I reach in and I feel nothing, odds are the pile's about 100 degrees. If I reach in and I can keep my hand in, odds are it's 110, 115. If I reach my hand in and I got to pull it out, it's 130 plus. And so just my personal thermometer here is a really good way. I don't have to go out and buy a $30 thermometer. I just use my hand to tell. And if I can't leave my hand in the pile, I got to turn it. Because if I'm not comfortable, my microbes aren't comfortable. So why use concentrate compost over other things? Some of you may recognize this great stock photography straight from Keynote. Yeah, I was going to write a bunch on the slide, but I was like, it's self-apparent, isn't it? Come on. No, this is why this method is better than anything, because it's ultimately up to microbes to correct the toxin imbalances. So what is a toxin? I'm going to define it for you as anything in a greater quantity than is ample for life. So if I have 1 gold bar, awesome. If I got 10 tons of gold dropped on me, not so awesome. So even though gold's awesome, too much gold is not awesome. So it's anything. Could even be great. Could be nitrogen. You got too much nitrogen, all of a sudden that's a toxin. Could be anything out of balance. That's why I'm defining it as this. So which element's out of balance? You know, this line may give you some clue, but it's hard to tell which thing is out of balance here, right? So if I go to a situation like this, like say the microbes ate whatever this was and moved it over here, and the way they're doing it, they're realigning these toxins. So now I'm in balance, right? They've balanced it out. Now life is as optimally as it can going, all the things are cycling. But the cool thing about this is now that I've balanced it, this baseline can also fluctuate. So if I go back to this initial picture here, it was here, and you thought this was where it was going to all balance out to, right? At this line. But check it out. It actually balanced above there because the microbes know better than us. They're better farmers. They balanced it out up there. The baseline can also fluctuate, and so now instead of 6-foot taro, you're going to get 8-foot taro. And the baseline just jumped up. Because we don't know what the potential of Earth is. We can only see what we see right now. And imagine if we focused on these microbes that they can clean up the toxins, that Earth then naturally just evolves through this great more complexity. That we get taller, or we get more complex in some way that's going to be of greater advantage to us. And so we don't even know where the bottom line is today. I mean, it could be anywhere, right? Yeah. Sorry, I got to my next slide too. I blew my McDonald's sandwich out of the water. Okay. Oh. So I went to Google and I typed into Google Image and I typed food. Because I needed an image for this. And this was the first thing that came up, and I was like, it's going in. Yep, it's going in. Because you think of it, right? And you think, oh, McDonald's, like, maybe that's not the best thing for you. But what if they were naturally farming? What if this was a wheat thing that was super nutrient dense? These sesame seeds, each one contained as much as it did in 1913. This beef was locally grown. This lettuce, who knows? But imagine if it was, and we were doing this, there'd be nothing wrong with grinding at McDonald's. We'd be getting nutrient dense, the stuff that our body craves. You could eat this, and I mean, maybe you wouldn't want to eat that every day, but man, it'd be cool, right? So less toxins, and I also kind of say that as a deficiency, like too much toxin deficiencies. You get higher nutrient density. Just naturally. The more it's going to assemble the right way, the more you're going to get it. So I don't, you can go improve it, but also just the less toxins, the more natural nutrient there's going to be. So in natural farming, we use a bunch of inputs to make our nutrient quality higher. You may recognize this guy. You made the cut, man. Speaking of nutrient density, this here is how I made a similar thing to, actually not this, but the syrup. The syrup. Yeah, someone drank it all. Anyone who drank it, did you notice it kind of pulled moisture out of your tongue? That's crucial. That when you make yours, better make sure it does that same thing. So this here, to make this, it's simple. It's brown sugar, and this isn't this exactly, this would make it comfrey, but I made one out of banana flowers. Notice, cut the banana flowers and made this stuff. And what happens is, in this process, is I'm getting the best stuff. And let me elaborate on that a little bit. Basically, I should have put a better picture in here because I'm kind of just ad-libbing on this slide a little bit. But essentially, if I pack this jar full of this banana flour after I had smashed it pretty well with this sugar into it at the correct ratio, you would notice liquid would come out of this already. But majority of the junk is staying inside the cell. That liquid that comes out is the best liquid, and it's drawn across by the sugar in an osmotic reaction, which I don't know, am I going over people's heads? So is everyone familiar with osmosis? Okay. So osmosis is you got a different charge and it's pulling water across a cell wall without actually it goes through. And so what happens is you get an osmotic reaction that the sugar pulls the best stuff from the cell wall into this juice. The rest of the stuff is left in the cell. So all those other things that you didn't need, like, say it's its reproductive organs or something that you didn't need stay in there, but its best juice, what it was using to grow, come out. Because that's the stuff that's translocatable by sugar, and it comes out. So I'm getting just the best stuff concentrated in here in my inputs. So my inputs are of the highest quality of nutrition. And then I use it on my plants, and it just magnifies that there. I know. I probably should have prepared those types of slides, but if you go to naturalfarminghawaii.net, you'll grab it there. And the reason I don't do that, and I don't bring it to this type stuff, is because I got 100 recipes. And you're going to leave with a bunch of acronyms, and you're going to go home and be like, how much sugar do I add to this brown rice? And you're like, and you're going to confuse it all. So that's why I don't do these here. What I prefer to do is have you come do a 2-hour session on one recipe. Do it with me. You go home with your own. You mix it, and you got it. Because once you do it tactilely with your hands and you taste my stuff, and if you come to the workshop, you're going to have to drink it, so be prepared. You'll know. And once you know in your being, then, because I can't convey a taste to you without you tasting it. And so I'm so not to disappoint tonight, but too much of how to do it, I'm for various reasons not letting that out. Okay, so I went to Dr. Dienick's lecture here, and it blew my mind. I really enjoyed it. It was just like, Dr. Dienick, you're awesome. I hope I have as much enthusiasm as you when I present. And I'm trying, man. But he presented this to me, that our soils are positive, and they're stacked like clay plates, real tight, right? And so I was sitting there out here today, I was like, all right, man, this sounds good. He's getting into some chemistry. This is what I like. Yeah, so essentially this is what we're working with at Hamakua. Tightly packed positive soils. Clay, because it's a positive charge versus a negative charge. Majority of soils are a negative charge, so when a particle lands here, typically it's a negative soil, and the particles that you want are positive, and it just joins. But because this is positive and the particle that lands is positive, it sits on top here and it can't go in, and then as soon as rain comes, it just washes it away. And it's as if it's levitating up here on a magnet. So typically you got negative soils goes in. Our soils are positive, so this is the problem. It's why we have such poor mineral retention and so much runoff, and combined with so much rain. But this is the problem he presented. We got tightly packed, compacted soils. So what did he recommend? Organic matter, right? Liming, some other solutions like that. What am I going to recommend? Something even cooler. And cheaper. And cheaper. It just costs you a trip to the ocean. So, salt is two elements sharing an electron. So this is a super simple way of showing that. I got a positive one, I got a negative one, and they're sharing this electron, and they're happy together because they're balanced. They got that electron that's sharing between them. They're like, cool. It's almost like a marriage, right? Where do we have a lot of salt on this island? In the ocean, exactly. Not only does the ocean have lots of salt, it has lots of different types of salt. And it also has all the nutrients that ran off the ocean, ran off the land and into the ocean. It has everything in it. It's like a big mineral soup. So I take these salts, such as salt I get out of the ocean, and I add water to it. Got my little nice Mickey Mouse water here, H2O. And water has a charge to it, and water's slippery. It likes to go around, it likes to kind of cheat. They were married here, but it's like, the girlfriend, hot girl goes by, it's like, what's up, baby? How you doing? And it shares an easier electron. So this salt was like, hey, I was cool with you, but now I'm going to go with this water for a bit, and now I'm going to kind of dissolve. So with our ocean water, we can still dissolve it by diluting it. We can add more water in, and so we can still dissolve what was a salt into further things. So we still got this salt, we now diluted it. Now this thing is sharing an electron with this extra water that we diluted it with, and it's like, oh, well, I'll just see you later. And this one, because this one is hanging out here, happy, this one just takes off. And it's like, I have nothing to hang out with. I'm not bound anymore. I'm just going to cruise around, see what happens. And if we didn't move this and the water evaporated out, sure enough, we'd go back to this situation. or this situation, you know, the water leaves again, and it would find its thing if we left it in a bucket or like a shallow pool or something, you know, and you get your salt back on the ground. So after it's gone there, after it's taken apart, after we've diluted at this section, this is now where we need to move it out of there. And so what we do is we put this on our positive soil. Now this negative ion that's here, that's hanging out, sees this positive soil. And now we got the right charge, right? Because we split it up. The positive's out with the water, hanging out, having a great time. And the negative's like, well, I ain't got nothing to do. I'll just hang out with this soil. And voila! It wedges itself right between our tightly packed soil. And it goes, oh, that's a nice spot. And just wedges itself right in there. This thing that was this nice uniform charge now got this other charge in there, so it makes it spread. How much is it going to spread? Well, it depends on what this chemical element is right here. If it's a certain one, it's going to wonk at this degree. If it's a different one, it's going to wonk at a different degree. But you're going to change what was tightly packed plates into now these wonky plates. As you add more and more of these guys in, and their other counterparts out with the water hanging out, you drop this guy in your soil. Now he's bound here. Now it dries up, the other guy dries, the water evaporates, and it's like, oh, where's my partner? Man, he's in the soil, and I'm like stuck over here. And so you've taken what was a salt, which is things we don't think we should put on the land, and you put it and you change the ions into your soil, and you've been able to just now create airspace. And imagine this happening thousands and thousands of times all over. What were these tight packed plates are now all these wonky things in there that now there's airspace coming through. And this was one of the better things that I thought I would share, because I had this revelation here at Practical Ag. And this comes from Master Cho of diluting the seawater, and the moment you've all been waiting for. Dilute 1 to 30. Yeah. No, now you're getting into the true recipe. Water. And at that dilution, you're going to be right at about like 4% or something. I don't know. It's basically, you could take that water, and it's the same as your blood. Your blood's a little salty. Just like when you get an IV, it's salty water. 1 to 30, you're going to be right at that same threshold. So the plant, even though you think, oh, salt plant, it's actually, it wants that salt. Just like our blood would also need that salt. So what I've been doing is, drenching. So I take 5-gallon buckets, I put the right amount of seawater in the bottom, then I'll fill them with water, and then I'll do it like sumo style, like spreading salt, just like whoosh, whoosh, until it's out. Then once I got enough down in my 5-gallon bucket, I just pick it up like this and just splash the water out. And I'm just sprenching huge areas, which sprench is a Ted Radovich term, also from Practical Ag, Hamakua, which is a combination of spray and drench. Patented Ted Radovich. But yeah, it's spray drench. It's real effective stuff. All right, and I forget what I have after this, but I'll keep going. Okay. Let's see time here. All right. So basically, what I've been working on recently has been working at Kalana Elementary School. So if you drive by there and notice, maybe over the last year, you've seen it's gotten a lot more vital, a lot more plants in there. 'Cause that's where I've been working. Yeah. Yeah. Well, now it's a garden. Yeah, and the governor came out to see me. That was pretty cool. He was like, hey, what's up? And I was like, hey. He had bodyguards protecting him from the kids. But I've been doing some really cool things with my kids. We've been checking out the IMO. This here was an IMO that we had, and then someone tripped and spilled the fermented plant juice. Look at that. It's on the soil. No, we've been making the inputs. The kids love it. It's 100% safe for them. They actually sometimes they'll come in with runny nose and stuff, and I'll give them this stuff, and then they'll come back the next day no runny nose. Like really quick immune boost, helps to purge it out. But we've also been going and looking at it on the microscopic level. This microscope can see in about 400 times which is about what you need to see if you have beneficial fungus or not. Like I said in the thing that the fungus provide the structure, that's the most important component I'm looking for. So when I make my compost concentrate, I put it under the microscope to say, how much fungus did I get? What kind, am I in my ballpark for what I'm trying to do here? So this microscope really helps. With it, I've been able to kind of reverse engineer back and then give people recipes that they don't need this microscope with. But it's a very essential research tool, especially when you're learning this stuff. And it's really cool that I've been able to do this with the kids and show them how to generate a soil sample biology report. And again, here we are making stuff. This is what the garden looked like end of last summer. It's like the last day of school. I took this picture. Kids working, they dump it all over themselves. This girl today was shooting the sprayers straight in her mouth for like 15 minutes. It's like, are you thirsty? Yeah, non-toxic, safe, all the whole deal. We've been growing some amazing kalo out there. It's good fun. This, again, no fertilizer here. This is just microorganisms doing its thing. We're able to pull nice yields. And then here's the kids making lactic acid bacteria. Here's our lactic acid, there's our brown sugar, we mixed it together. Was fun with the kids, we even made it out of chocolate milk. That you can make it out of any type of milk, and we chose chocolate milk to make it here because that's what we had at school. We make compost piles. Into the compost pile, we add the compost concentrate into it. So this is a way I can take yard waste. Like we got the tea leaves in here. We trimmed all our tea leaves. We got a bunch of paper from the school. I do add in a little bit of this old organic fertilizer that I have at the school from a previous garden teacher. And I add that into my compost pile just to get the nitrogen level high enough to get it to heat up initially. So if you're familiar with CN ratio composting, I'm using a little bit of organic pellet fertilizer into my compost. And I'd rather put it into my compost than directly on my plants because the compost is going to, like I said, detoxify it. That when I get that thing, I'm going to have really high levels of nitrogen, really extreme, and these guys are going to level it all out and find that higher baseline because I put in a really rich product. So they're going to neutralize it, but it's also going to be richer. So that's where I use that stuff in there. And they love it, turn into piles. Sometimes I do most of the turning, but they love spraying the hose. And also, I just left this in here because I wanted to kind of inspire some activism or whatever you got to. But I took this plot here in downtown Hilo, with a couple friends, was able to grow amazing amounts of kalo and sweet potato in here. And our first harvest, we pulled 200 pounds of taro and 200 pounds of sweet potato from a really tiny island in the middle of the street. And this entire thing was done all with natural farming. That it started with this. That when you see moss growing, think about it. Moss is one of the oldest things around. So the older earth was a more toxic place. More volcanoes spewing things up. The microbes hadn't taken all the toxins and sealed them in coal and oil deep under the ground, really safe where no one would burn them, right? But when moss is growing, you're in poor soil because it's the primordial plant. It's like the only thing that is left to cling to life. And so this was all moss. We came in with some wood chips and in the compost concentrate. And then we put the coconut. My friend Kapila cracks coconuts. He put coconut out there. And that really helped because it provided the moisture and the housing for those microbes to live in this pretty toxic, otherwise unforgiving land. That they started to live up in the coconut and then work their way down into the soil. And when I started, the soil it's sandy a little bit down there, but it was really thick before. And if you go there now, it's a lot of little balls together. And those little balls are that fungus taking the bacteria and building structure so that now the nematodes can crawl through it. So when I see those balls and I look, I know I got those 3 tiers starting to work for me. Starting to get that structure back into the soil. And this is what it looked like about 5 months into the project right here. You know, we already got a huge banana that already threw off a cake. We got papayas coming up. We got the kalo right there. It's, you know, it's like, yeah, about twice a week he cuts up roughly 200 coconuts, and the nut itself we put out there. We ran into some problems with the county. I'm not sure which person it was, but they thought that the meat inside the coconut was a disease vector. But had that person been more educated in terms of the microorganisms that we're working with here, there's like I would bet my life that there's no disease in here. That you know, I could eat 10 pounds of that dirt, and besides being full, I'd be fine. And again, just kind of beautifying downtown Hilo. At one point, we had a lot of kalo in there. I really liked it then. Now it's a lot of beautiful plants. Still a good thing going, but if anyone's feeling motivated, got an extra thing made up, go down, help out. Plant some kalo. And again, what was junk in just with this stuff can become, again, really lush and productive. And I just wanted to kind of sum up, this is my last slide before we get to questions, and basically give you the web resources. This website up here, naturalfarminghawaii.net, I've mentioned it. I've been running this website for about 5 years now, maybe 6 years, and tons of information, tons of videos on it, tutorials. The last 3 years, Practical Ag, Hamakua, lectures on there. All kinds of cool stuff. Odorless pigs, if someone asks you, or you want to tell a friend about what you heard tonight about the pigs or the chickens, send them to Odorless Pigs. A lot of info there, pretty site-specific for just odorless systems. The Hubble's Hog Heaven is also that book, but also a blog about her pigs. You get to see, you know, when they have new ones, if they run into any problems, what their deal is, updates on that. Kind of cool to check out. Nice resource. Soilfoundation.com is something I'm working on right now, and that's just like how I had odorless pigs be specific to animals. I'm making the soil foundation specific to the plants and building microorganism soil foundation. And then letsgrowhilo.com if you're into activism. So. Well, show of hands, who's interested at Saturday? My farm tour is not going to be in this series of Practical Ag, but maybe the spring series. Oh. Well, who's interested in a workshop by show of hands? Okay, almost everybody. Okay, so, all right. No, because I'm really thinking about this, and I wanted to do it this Saturday to offer it, but it's only two days away, and then we got that coming up. Could do it the following weekend. We got another tour. There's always a tour on Saturdays, right? I can do Sundays. This Sunday I'm busy unless you want to do it in the afternoon. So let me see if I can accommodate Sunday, because I'd like to get this down.
Where would it be?
At my farm, or at the school in Paiko, one of the two. Who's up for Sunday afternoon? it in the afternoon because my morning's booked. It would be probably like 3 to 5 in Popaiko. Yeah? All right, well, if you guys sign up now and maybe put a down payment in. Yeah, I'd like to offer that. Okay, so the people that do want to take the Sunday class, sign up on your way out, and then the people that are interested in a further class, do you want to send me an email? And my email is right here. And just put in the subject like workshop. And then I think we're going to be running more series through Practical Ag too, at least the compost concentrate one. And then perhaps if you're really into it and you're looking to be a person that's going to teach others, we're going to do a certification on each of the inputs and really in-depth, really in detail coming up. And I was talking with Kaitea about that before I got up here. And we're looking to do that March-ish, for the in-detail, in-depth type of learning stuff. Any questions? Oh, was that good?
Great. Your recipe for the lab.
Wait, hang on. Gino.
What is the thickness of the mat that you have? Is it 6 mil or something like that?
For the plastic liner in the pig pen? You know, we used an old greenhouse covering, so I'm not sure. It is pretty thick though. And mine's not.
It's solid though. You cannot have perforations or anything like that.
Yep. For if you're gonna go with the NRCS thing, yes, absolutely, has to be that way.
Your lab mix that you're making. Is that rice water, milk,
Yeah.
sugar?
Yeah. It is. Any other questions?
A couple of years ago, I tried to grow some sweet pea flowers, and I had little pots with compost soil together, and I got the little plants up about 3 inches or so, and I planted them in the soil, and they did very poorly, and I think it was because the pH of the soil was too acidic, and the sweet peas are legumes, and they like a more or less neutral, slightly alkaline soil. So how would you adjust the pH of the soil to satisfy legumes?
Okay, so so the question was, he had some peas growing, and then they grew up about yay high, then he transplanted them out, and then from there on they didn't really do that well. So what can he do to make it better? And when I was here and Dr. Dienek was talking, one of the things he mentioned about you put a lettuce in the ground and it never gets bigger than that is we have our soils suck up phosphorus, big time. And so that was my idea, was that it's sucking up the phosphorus is what's going to trigger that growth, and that's why it stayed stunted, was because of the phosphorus. What he recommended was to add a lot of organic matter to your soil. What I'm going to recommend is that you come in with the concentrated compost and the 2 tools that I talked about, the growth syrup and the lactic acid bacteria. And what those things are going to do is it's going to get that biology, and it's going to quickly move into that ground and create organic matter in situ. So you don't have to take a bunch of organic matter and dump it there. You take this compost concentrate and it's going to create your organic matter in place. So in a temporary solution, I do recommend you go with Dienek's idea of liming your soil. If it's a pH problem and you're less than 5.5, then I do recommend you go with Dienek's solution and start with liming. So either crushed coral from Kauai High on the other side of the island, or a product like Dolomite or Dolapril are the ways to do it. Once you've gotten up to that liming part and you've gotten past that, then using the compost concentrate, and also mulching onto there. And typically they'll say the mulch is going to steal your nitrogen and stunt your growth as well. But with the compost concentrate, that effect does not occur. So you can mulch, apply compost concentrate, and in situ, in place, they're going to fix organic matter around your peas, and that's going to free up the phosphorus, which then is going to, your plant's going to grow again. So that's my best analysis on that one. So yes.
What's the time frame with what you just described? How long, as you apply it, is this all just right when you plant it, or is it you have to let it sit for 3 months, or after you get the microbes?
So if you're going to follow Master Cho's verbatim thing, I typically tend to do it all at once because I'm just running speed. But if I was to do a commercial operation and I was to come and consult for you, what I'm going to recommend is you do your soil foundation treatment, which includes spreading sufficient amounts of compost concentrate and then watering in with the other tools. Then the next week, you're going to come back and water again with the tools. No more compost concentrate. And if you've been taking good care of your field, that 2 weeks after that period, you can sow directly into it. And that's the way to do it. In those 2 weeks, you brought your soil enough alive. You can visually see your soil texture change into better aggregates, darker color, richer looking. In those 2 weeks, you'll visually see that. If you got poorer soils or you're just starting this for the first time, you want to water that stuff on for 4 weeks. So instead of 2 weeks, it's now a 4-week thing where you fed it for those extra 2 weeks without really trying to plant or trample or run in your field. You just spread this stuff out, water it, come back, water it, water it, water it, and then in your 4th week, now you can sow in and till in. Or not, excuse me, don't till it after that. You can sow your seeds directly in.
Would you till it before you started putting that concentrate?
If you do till it, then you're probably going to need the 4 weeks again. So if you're growing something like a root crop, you're definitely going to need those 4 weeks. If you're doing something like a lettuce, there's really no need to till in between, and so you don't need those 4 weeks. In my case right now, what I'm doing is I'm taking grass fields and using a spader tool to spade up the grass. I'm removing the grass, and then I'm coming out with the soil foundation. And hopefully, I've hit the point where I got enough beneficial fungus in here that the grass is not going to come back. And what I mean by that is that grass loves bacteria. So it's the building material stuff that it loves. The things I like taro, sweet potatoes, those things I want to eat, they like more fungus. And so it's a matter of switching my soil from being lots of bacteria to more fungus. And once I have more fungus, the grass is like, well, I'll go grow where there's more bacteria. And it's not going to want to naturally sprout where I've inoculated with this and it's taken into my soils. So by skewing my thing to be more fungal and restoring more of that soil food web and getting to a more self-sufficient operating cycle, the grass and the things we consider weeds, which are typically fast to flower and reproduce, really fast nitrogen cycling plants, we consider weeds, steal nutrients from our plants, those things won't want to sprout in a more fungal, more of the soil food web present situation. So as I start to get there, and believe me, I've been working on this for the last 3 years, where it's like, yeah, just throw it out and the grass won't come back. And I'm like, yeah, right. But I think I finally crossed that boundary. And if I have, then I'm really onto something. Because grass out here is probably our biggest foe in Hamakua. Because our soils are essentially dead. If I soil sample out here, I'm only going to find bacteria. I'm going to find horrible aggregation. It's going to be really muddy water, and I'm going to find only bacteria. There's almost next to no fungus out here. Just soil conditions, combined with land use, we've eliminated it. And so by getting more fungus out there, the grasses won't be as much of a persistent thing. I won't have to be out there pulling guinea grass. If I can get the fungus there, the guinea grass is going to be like, oh man, I used to like it here with all this bacteria, but man, and it's going to naturally want to leave. If you can get your biology to go that way. And I think I'm on the edge of the roller coaster thing. I think I'm finally there in terms of doing it. But that's where the microscope really helps me out, is to determine how far along that fungal path am I, because I can see fungus with a microscope. Any other questions? Ben?
There's something I know that I want you to mention, and that's with like pests, bugs, grasshoppers, things that don't really seem to want to come around. If you could talk about that a little bit.
Okay, so yeah, on natural farming on pests. I've given this lecture 3 years in a row, and each 4 years in a row, I don't know how long, but each time I try to like bring it up a little differently, so I cover different aspects in here. One of the things I didn't even talk about was pests at all. So my dad has this great quote, that before he started naturally farming, he used to have a lot of pests. Now that he's naturally farming, he has a lot of insects. So his mindset has changed. He doesn't look at a thing and think, oh, you got to kill this. He looks at it and he thinks, man, like, you know, there's some insects. It's a balance into this system. So what happens when you look out in your plant, all of a sudden all its leaves are eaten up, holes all over it? Most likely your problem was that you added too much nitrogen. Nitrogen is this soft growth thing that makes people kind of like not healthy and strong. It's too much water in their system. So when the bug comes to eat it and chomp down on the leaf, it's delicious. It's like a fresh, crisp, nice salad that they chomp down on, because there's so much nitrogen, so much water in there that they'll eat it, and they'll eat your whole plant. If you're using the natural farming, your nutrients are going to be more in balance. Your nutrients are going to be more in balance, right? So you're not going to get too much water in the leaf, and when the pest takes a bite, or this insect takes a bite, it's like, oh man, that wasn't as good as this lush thing over here, and it's going to move away. So it's just going to take, instead of just sitting there all day and just being like, I can't get enough of this. Guys, come here, check out this plant. It's going to be like, it's going to take a bite and be like, oh man, where am I going to get some good food today? And it's going to keep hopping along. And so by making your plant stronger, by correcting those nutrient imbalances, you're going to naturally have less pests on there. It's also scientifically proven, which I don't have any of that data with me, that the wax layer that develops on leaves is thicker when you have this lactic acid bacteria and these indigenous microorganisms like the compost concentrate on there. You know how sometimes you feel a plant, and if you come into my garden now, you look at it at the school, and to me it's starting to look fake. You know how fake flowers are plasticky, got that look to it? Like you come in and it's so vital, so like that it looks, yeah, you're like, wow, you got that sheen to it. And it's the wax layer that's built up that it's so robust and abundant that the pests aren't now a problem to me. The pest I still haven't dealt with, and I still sort of consider a pest, is slugs at the garden. And the reason there are so many slugs is, A, that the soil's so bacterially oriented that the slugs are loving that bacteria. They just eat it up, they love it. And 2, that there's too many hiding spaces for them right now. That if I mitigated the hiding spaces, I wouldn't have nearly as much of a problem. But they have, they live in the cave and they have their reproduction parties and then they come out. It's like reproduction party, come out. So I'm not going to win until I get rid of their environment and make it a little more unfriendly for them. And another thing I want to say about pests is the insects are the janitors of nature. And I have this story where I have a greenhouse and I have tomatoes in there. And the tomato by the door started to get whitefly on it. And they're eating that thing and they're sucking its leaves and they're sucking it dry and they're just killing it. It's dead. And my dad comes by and he says, man, you better remove that tomato because the whitefly is just going to spread and it's just going to get worse from here. Right? And that's typical, pretty good, wisdom passed along. You see a problem, remove it, right? But I didn't. I left it there. And sure enough, what happened was that tomato got the life sucked out of it, completely died, the whitefly mutilated it, and it was dead and gone, disappeared. None of the other tomatoes got it. Why? The tomato by the door was getting wet. Tomatoes hate moisture on them. They like mist. They're from the Andes. But they hate moisture sitting on their leaves. They hate pools of water on them. They hate it. So when it's by the door, it's getting rained on. Water's hitting that tomato. That tomato was very stressed, very unhappy, did not want to live. So it was like, kill me now. Right? Some predator action. And the bugs answered that call. They saw the distress signal. They came in. They're like, okay, and they janitored that up. You know, it's like they got rid of the problem so it didn't get gangrenous and spread, and they dealt with it. And so the bugs were there. Instead of looking at it as a pest, instead of looking at it as a problem, I got to look more and be like, okay, the tomato's by the door. Now that makes sense. Like, it's getting wet. They don't like water. So if you got a lot of pests, they're trying to tell you something. That your plants are stressed. So don't go kill the pests. That's like shooting the messenger. It's not going to do anything for you. Still got, well, you have a bunch of dead messengers. Maybe you could ferment them.
This is
Hawaii. Yeah. Okay, so any other questions? Can't read analog clocks. 7:47. Got 15 more minutes. Could go home, hang out with your family. Okay, so I will get a list right now, and if you're going to be there on Sunday, write your name down and a way to contact you, because I will either phone number or email, and I will let you know exactly where I learned.
Drake.
You got it, perfect. There, right there.
Okay.
And make sure it's legible too.
Yep. Are you going to give directions to your place now?
No, I'll do it through this here.
So you would like our email address?
Email or phone. Email is probably easier because I can put it all to one at once. But if you don't like that, I can call you. So I hope you guys found this kind of insightful if you're already experienced, and if you just refresh this, I hope you found it like something you want to get into, because for me it's like, it's where it's at. So, thank you.
Hello, everybody. If you could just take a couple of minutes and fill out the evaluation form. We greatly appreciate the feedback from all of you. So mahalo again for everybody coming out to Practical Agriculture for Hamakua. Drake, we are a program of the Hilo Hamakua Community Development Corporation, co-sponsored by Hawaii County Department of Research and Development in collaboration with the Laupohoihoi Community Public Charter School. So mahalo for everybody. Mahalo, Drake.